I was outed against my will. Girl pulls me aside and she's like, Jessie, do you have a girlfriend? Hi everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Jessie, and I thought today I would share with you my coming out story extended version. It's a really long story and it takes place over like more than 10 years. I'm 30 now. But right now I'm back home in Sydney. I'm outside at the moment. I went on a hike today and I'm at a beach right now. Let me show you actually my view, what I'm looking at. Look at that. Sorry if you can hear the waves in the back, but hopefully it adds to the serenity of this place a little bit. So the way I've structured this video is how I figured out that I was gay or into women, which includes things from childhood and adolescent and also high school, which is really when I first realized that I like girls in that way. I'll talk to you about how I came out to my friends, which is a two-parter, and how I came out to my family, which was probably one of the biggest aspects of the story. And also how I came out at work, because I think a lot of people struggle with that. I certainly struggled with it in terms of like, do you bring that part of you to work? But yes, so there's lots of parts to the story, basically. And I guess the reason that I'm sharing this is because when I was growing up, the only real representation we had on screens was Ellen DeGeneres. Like, I'm not even kidding. And so I think it took me a lot longer to realize that I was gay than if I had had better representation. Not like, even from like a femme perspective, I just didn't see anybody who looked like me, let alone look like me in this way that I am, Chinese Australian. I hope that this story is helpful to somebody out there in some way. I promise you that through everything that I have gone through in these past 10, 12, 14 years, it is so worth it, and I am so happy now that I get to wake up every single day and be nobody but myself, and I don't have to hide any part of myself. And also I get to be with the person that I love the most in the world, who happens to be a girl, the most wonderful girl. And that feels so liberating, and I really, really, really feel so much happiness that I think when I was younger and going through the harder moments with this journey, that I didn't really imagine that I would be able to experience one day. So it's as much for you as it is for me, I think, this video. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to talk about this all chronologically because that's just what's easiest for my brain. So let's talk about early childhood and the first time looking back that I ever really was like, girls are interesting. Or like all these signs looking back that started even from when I was really little. So one of my first memories of when I looked at a girl in like a head cocking kind of way was during the 2000 Olympics, which was in Sydney. Obviously I'm Australian, so I was born and raised in Sydney. I was 4 years old. And I have a memory of looking at the TV screen when Nikki Webster was performing. This is so niche, I'm sorry, but okay, it's part of my story, okay? So when Nikki Webster was performing on the opening ceremony, I thought she was so beautiful. And I immediately had like a crush on her at 4 years old, which looking back was like, okay, so the signs were there. The signs were there. And then another story that is kind of embarrassing, but I think looking back is really funny, is, I don't know how old I was, but it was the first time I'd ever had access to Google on the family computer. And do you know what the first thing I typed in was? It was boobs. It was boobs. Like genuinely, me as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old had access to the free internet one day, and that's what I typed in. I don't know why, I just wanted to see it. So looking back, these two core memories definitely are screaming lesbiana, okay? Let's be honest, in the making. let's fast forward to high school, because this is really where things begin. Throughout high school, which if you're in the US, I think it's middle school plus high school. For us, it's high school, so years grade 7 to 12. I always had really intense friendships with girls. When I look back, boys were like not even in my peripheral, which should have been a sign anyway. Or if I did have a crush on a boy, it'd always be on like a very feminine boy. The signs were there, you know? The first time I actually realized that I had feelings for a girl was in my final year of high school, so year 12, 12th grade, senior year. I think I was 16-ish, 16, 17, and I was playing volleyball. And the captain of my volleyball team, she was so good at playing volleyball. She ended up representing Australia at one point. And I just had the biggest crush on her. But if you had asked me in that moment, I wouldn't have used the word crush to describe it, you know. But I definitely had a crush on her. I wanted to just make her happy. I made dumplings for her multiple times and took them to practice. I don't think she had any idea, and I hope she doesn't watch this because she'll definitely know who she is. But it wasn't clocking to me that it was a crush in this romantic way, because again, there was no representation. So in my mind, in my 16-year-old mind, I truly did not even consider the possibility of lesbians having like long hair or being femme or like being even Asian. Are you kidding me? Like I really just didn't think that far and didn't think, it wasn't in my world, you know? But then I came across on YouTube, oh my God, this story is so detailed, you guys. I'm gonna keep everything in though, mostly. And I hope that's okay with you. But I remember discovering on YouTube, after probably searching like, am I gay 1,000 times and taking all the BuzzFeed tests and, you know, whatever. Finally, my algorithm led me to a couple of the iconic OG lesbian YouTube couples like Rose and Rosie, our mothers, Shannon and Cami back then, eventually Kristen and Steph, who are still my favorite couple to this day. And, you know, these were all girls who are femme. And it blew my mind. Like, it sounds so silly now, but it really was a moment where I was like, oh my God, that could be me. Minus the Caucasian part, of course, but that could be me. And then something in my mind just switched. And I remember after volleyball practice one day, I was like sitting with myself and thinking like, could these feelings I have towards my volleyball captain be actually romantic and like a crush? And could I be gay? Could I be this person? And, you know, funnily enough, looking back, I think I accepted myself very quickly. And I didn't have like a whole lot of internalized homophobia compared to, you know, some other people that I've met. I've always just loved being me, and that was just another part of me that I discovered. But what was really hard about this whole journey was managing family expectations. It was really the coming out bit that became so much more difficult rather than accepting me bit, if that makes sense. But I was just rolling with it. I was like, cool, so this is me. Like, I'm glad actually that I now have a way to define all these things that I've been feeling. Shows like Orange is the New Black, Orphan Black, Imagine Me and You, which was a little bit older then. I was just trying to consume any type of media that had kind of lesbian characters in it, and being like, whoa, okay, I feel at one with this. Then came the actual coming out bit. So part one of many. The first round of this happened with some of my closest friends after I discovered that this crush that I had on my volleyball captain was real. This is the way I came out to them. So I think I had about 2 or 3 really close friends around that time, and friends on my outer circle that I didn't come out to until a bit later. But to these 2 or 3 friends, I remember that I always, 1, tried to catch them in a one-on-one moment, and then 2, this is how I had every single conversation with them. Me. Hey, friend, could you ever consider yourself dating a girl? Like, could you ever see yourself dating a girl? Them. I'm not sure, maybe not, I've never thought about it. Why? What about you? Me. Then I say, yeah, you know what? I think I would. I think I would. And that was like a soft coming out, if you will. And every single one of them were like, oh, okay, that's cool. So thankfully, I didn't really have friends who cared, which I'm so thankful for. I think that's also like a factor of growing up in Australia, and people were just being pretty chill here and not so worried about things like that. Even though back then it was a different time, and I think no one else within my friendship circle or extended friendship circle was queer or gay or bi or anything like that. So I was kind of, the first one that I knew to have come out in that way. So friends were fine with it, which is really great. I also had, at this point, a bunch of online friends. So I had found like community on Tumblr, because as everyone was back then, if you didn't have, there were parts of you that you could show online that you couldn't show in person. And I had a few really good friends from that time as well who knew that I was gay. They also were mostly gay because of the fandoms we were in, like Orange is the New Black and Orphan Black and Hunger Games and whatever, Glee. So that was also a huge comfort to me during that time. Okay, then after Friends Part 1 comes Family Part 1. And mind you, at this point, I'm still about 17. So I probably have graduated from high school at this point, and I'm like, let's say in the break before I start uni. Okay, so at this point, my closest friends knew, right? But nobody in my family knew. The good news is that I have a single mum, which means that's one less parent to tell. And but I also have an older brother who's like 5 or 6 years older than me. And I wasn't really nervous about telling him because we're like two peas in a pod, and even with the age gap, like I knew that he wouldn't really care. It was my mum who I was really worried about. So I remember one day trying to like test it with her. And I remember over many conversations, we saw eye to eye on everything. And this is the sweetest woman in the world. She is the kindest, the best mum ever. Raised me and my brother, like gave everything to her kids. Really gentle, sweet person. But this was always the one topic that we couldn't agree on. And I remember over a series of questions and times and walks that we had done, asking her, like, have you ever thought about dating girls? What do you think about this community? Blah, blah, blah. And the answer, as is with a lot of parents, and especially Asian parents, they're like, I don't have a personal problem with them as long as it happens outside of my house. Like, I don't care if our neighbor's kid's gay or our friend's kid's gay. Someone's just blowing their nose in the corner, just fine. I just don't want one of my kids to be gay. And I remember one day pushing her harder and being like, okay, but what if one of your kids was gay one day? And her answer was really hurtful and basically suggested that it would be like they were not her kid anymore. And I'm not like saying the exact phrasing because I don't think that's helpful. Also because my mum watches my YouTube videos now, which is amazing. I mean, like I said, there's a very happy ending to this. So hi, Mum, if you're watching this. So after that conversation with her, I basically was scared back into the closet. I went running back into that closet like it was nobody's business. And at this point, I start uni. My friends know that I'm gay, or at least that I have the capacity to date women or that I'm attracted to women. But then, because of the family stuff, I ended up getting a boyfriend. I know. But it's what I felt I had to do at that point. There was a really sweet guy, let's call him Chase. And this guy Chase and I were on the same volleyball team. I was on the women's side, he was on the men's side, and he just had the biggest crush on me. How could you know? But yeah, he basically had a big crush on me, and I knew it. And he was a perfectly nice guy, kind of kept asking me out. And one day after this conversation with Mom, I was like, you know what, fine, like, let's go out. ended up being with him for almost a year. I know. And to be honest, it was perfectly fine. Like, I think I had convinced myself that, you know, this is what I needed to do at that time. I don't know. Like, I always speak very fondly of him and, you know, it was good, but obviously something was missing. Something didn't feel right. There were moments where it felt like I was in a play, like I was in a theater production, and I had certain lines that I needed to say and I felt very out of body at some moments. But towards the end, we started fighting a lot because I think I had a lot of tension. It was all catching up to me, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I didn't want to break up with him, so then I started causing a whole ton of fights. But then we had the potentially gayest breakup ever, and I actually don't think he knows this part of the story, but one night after a big fight, I picked up this novel, Carol. It's the movie that became Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara, but it was actually an adaptation of a book called The Price of Salt, which was written, I think, in the 50s or 60s, something like that. And it's a story about two women falling in love from the perspective of the younger woman. And I read that book in one night, truly, start to finish. I was up till like 3 or 4 a.m. And then the next morning, I broke up with him because I had this moment where I realized that I just was not living truthfully to me, and it wasn't fair to him and it wasn't fair to me to keep it going, you know? I would be lying if I said it wasn't like a relief. I mean, it was obviously still painful because I think any breakup where you actually care about the other person is painful. And maybe, you know, I wasn't deeply in love with him, but I did have so much love for him and we built a really nice relationship. So yes, it was still very hard, but I felt like I had reclaimed some part of myself that day. So I guess that part of the story I want to reiterate is like, it's okay for you to take however many turns you need to find your way back to yourself. Obviously that happened to me partially because of a lot of family pressure, but I am so grateful for having had that experience because I am never left with any questions or wondering like anything. I feel like everything happened the way it should have, and now I know myself infinitely better because of it, and I have so much more life experience, you know? Oh my gosh, wait, there's a crow that's just like getting into some chips right now. I have to show you this. Can you see that? Can you guys see that? He's having the best day of his life right now. Okay, so Chase and I break up. At this point, I think I am maybe 20 and I'm in my second last year of university. I apply to study abroad. In my final year of university, I get accepted. And in this kind of year period before I go abroad, and spoiler alert, I meet the love of my life, but that will come later. But in this year period, I start kind of trying to go on dates with girls. Nothing really stands out to me, but I know that that's what I'm supposed to be doing. But yeah, I don't meet anybody who kind of moves my heart in any type of way until I go overseas. And I was basically accepted into the study abroad program in Vancouver. At this point, I'd never been to North America. So one of my best friends and I decided to do like a 6-week trip around the US and Canada before I went to study in Vancouver. And we decided to go to San Francisco for 4 days. And on day 2 on Tinder, I matched with a girl called Lily. And at this point I was 21. So 9 years ago at this point. But I matched with a girl called Lily. I thought she was really beautiful. And then on day 4, so day 4 of my 4th night in San Francisco, we decided to go on a date. And this is going to be a story for another time, but basically it was the best date of my life. I had never felt, oh my God, I'm still blushing, even though Lily and I have been together for so many years now. But thinking about this does make me blush. Okay, so the date lasted till like 3 a.m. I was leaving at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. And we tried to make it as long as we could. And it was so beautiful. It was the first time I had ever felt like I was soaring, and I had never had that feeling with anybody else. So I, at that moment, was like, okay, yeah, this is right. Like I said, that will be its own story time, and I want to tell that story with Lily eventually. But long story short of this part of the big story, we ended up dating, me and Lily, semi-long distance from San Francisco, where she's from, to Vancouver for like 4 or 5 months. But eventually we break up because of distance, because I was going back to Sydney to start my big girl job, and also because Lily is an athlete, and her life at that point, she was also 21. It's understandable that she couldn't really see herself committing to anyone long term at that point, which is fine. And don't worry, again, it has a happy ending. All my friends pretty much knew. I think I like hard launched her on socials, but my mum still didn't know. Which brings us to when I moved back to Sydney. So after I studied abroad in Vancouver, I moved back to Sydney, and at this point, that was a butterfly. Did you guys see that? At this point, I'm single, and I'm about to start my first big girl job, my corporate job. I had a grad job at one of Australia's biggest banks, and I was basically set to start this next chapter of my life. And at this point, I think I'm 21, turning 22. At this point, I meet my ex-girlfriend, so not Lily. This is the only other a woman who I have been in like a long-term / serious relationship with. Let's call her Max. So Max and I met, and we ended up being together for almost 2 years, or like a year and a half. And it was a really wonderful relationship. I have nothing but good things to say about her. And it was through Max that I came out to my family, or my mum. At that point, I was still living at home and commuting to my job every day. Max was living on campus. She was still in uni, so we basically had to commute. Either I had to go and stay on the dorms, or she had to come and stay with me. I was kind of, not forced, but it was just gonna be a lot easier if I told my mum and could have Max over. And I think after a couple months, I was like, okay, I'm gonna tell my mum. And this part of the story is kind of sad but real, I guess. My mum is from China. She migrated to Australia like 2 years before I was born. She already had my brother at that point. So the Chinese culture was very much embedded in her, and also the culture of this one generation above us, which is a lot more traditional and conservative, especially socially. So I think I went into the conversation already being ready for it to not go very well. And I knew that it was going to take a long time for her to come around to it, if ever. So I remember one day sitting her down and being like, I have something to tell you. And I couldn't say it. I just couldn't get it out of my mouth. And she guessed a ton of things. She guessed if I was pregnant, which was not possible, obviously, until it got to a point where I was like, no, it's about someone I'm seeing or that I'm dating. And she was like, okay, are you dating a girl? And I said, yes. And her reaction, it was like, I think a lot of parents react with anger, but my mum is not like that. She reacted more with sadness and devastation and confusion, and couldn't kind of believe it. And it was really hard. We both cried, and she was asking me if it was her fault, if it was my family's fault, because obviously I didn't have a dad around when I was growing up. And she was like, is it because of that and everything? And I had to really try and explain to her through time that there was no reason for it. I am just who I am, and that is okay. But I also really understood it must have been really hard for her, or any parent out there, because they raise you, I guess, with this certain future in mind for you. Like, she always, when I was younger, we always talked about me finding a husband and having kids. And even when I was with Chase, you know, she was like, oh, you know, your kids would be beautiful or whatever. And now it's like this big shock to them in that moment where they're like, okay, this reality that I thought might happen for my children is never going to happen. And so I think parents need a lot of time to mourn that and to come to terms with that. Over the course of many months and many conversations that we had, I'm not by nature a very patient person. I am an Aries, okay, I'm a fire sign. I have a lot of patience in pockets, but generally I'm a little bit more short-tempered and impatient. But looking back, I am really proud of the way that I handled my coming out with my mum, I think. I think I was quite patient with her and had an understanding going in that it was going to take months or years for her to be okay with it, and that I was ultimately okay with that. And I had to be okay with that if I wanted to keep her in my life, and vice versa, you know. And I knew also that it would take time for her to see that my life was not affected. If anything, it was going to be changed for the better, because now I could actually be myself and be happy and live very authentically to me, you know. Another thing that I think a lot of parents worry about is, well, A, they think it's a choice. So she kept saying things like, you know, I'm worried that you're choosing a path in life that is going to be harder for you than the other path. And I had to keep telling her, you know, Mum, that times are changing, and I actually don't feel, I've never felt discriminated against by my friends or by society or, you know, whoever. Like, I always felt pretty confident in my own self and my true self, and really, if people had a problem with that, that was on them and not me. Over the months, things just got better day by day, and then eventually, you know, Max was always welcome in our home. Mum was okay with it, and it's really nice. It was a really happy time in my life. Also around this time is the first time that I brought this into work, which I wanted to talk about as well. So there were people at my banking job who had been married to a same-sex partner for like 10 plus years and never talked about it at work. And I understood why, but I found it really sad, to be honest. And I really felt for them. And I had to really think about whether I wanted to bring that into my professional life as well. But unfortunately, actually, in that job that I worked, I was outed against my will, which is just the reality of things. But I remember going into work one day, and at this point I was still in my first year there. I ended up staying 5 years at this company, but in my first year there, I was a grad. So I was every 3 months joining a different team, rotating, you know, whatever. And in one of the teams, I got to work one day, and this team was a little bit toxic. Like, there was a lot of talking behind people's backs. And a girl pulls me aside, and she's like, Jessie, do you have a girlfriend? And I was like, what? I was like stunned, because I had never talked about that at work. I always kept my private life private unless I was friends with someone at work, and then I would tell them. And I was like, why? And they said, someone from the team saw you and Max holding hands on the weekend, and they're asking everybody right now if you have a girlfriend. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, you guys are insane for this, because the weekend is my time, and you're gonna take something you saw me do on the weekend and then take it to work and turn that into gossip. Genuinely abhorrent behavior and disgusting. And yeah, I think that was really shitty, like being outed against my will. But then I made a decision in that moment to just own it. And I was like, yeah, I do have a girlfriend, and I don't think it's very appropriate to be bringing my personal business into work like that. But it was honestly, it was fine. Like, I'm sure it just became like the hot gossip of the day, which didn't feel nice, especially because I was the most junior person in the team. And certain people, I'm sure, had their prejudices about it and treated me a little bit differently afterwards. But I'm like 8 years on from that job, and I feel so happy to have moved on from that and to have owned that in the moment as well, and not hidden away from it. I felt proud of myself for that as well. I was also a lot younger and they affected me a lot more. But now that I'm many years on and I'm 30 and it's so sexy and I know myself and I'm in a happy relationship, I'm doing a job that I love, which recently I've quit corporate now and I'm managing Lily, or trying to help Lily's athletic career, which is again for a different time. I really feel so happy and I feel so fulfilled, and I'm glad to have gone through everything to get to where I am now. And I wish I could give past me a hug and tell her that it was all going to work out. But I think I always had that belief as well. Like, really, even in the hard times, I never stopped. I really never tried to hide myself or hide who I was, except for the time I went back into the closet. But those were extreme circumstances, you know. And then eventually at work, because I was there for like 5 years, by year 3, I had joined and was leading the LGBTQ plus committee, or diversity and inclusion committee. So instead of like running away from it, I really leaned in and actually used it to my advantage and helped other people at work feel comfortable to bring their whole self to work, which ended up being so much more rewarding than hiding. So yeah, there is a lot more to the story. There's also how I kind of came out more publicly online, because now both Lily and I are very public with our relationship, and it means so much to have people tell us that by us being loud and proud, that it helps them feel more comfortable with themselves. It really feels worth it. The thing is that you never stop coming out, you know, like from like 16 to 23 were the years where I really actively came out to people in my life that were already in my life. But actually from then until now, every day I have to come out. Every day anyone in the community has to come out, or they have to make a decision about whether they should come out, because it never ends. So what's the point of me saying that? It's just that if you're not in the community and you're watching this for some reason, hi. And I hope that you have more compassion for people in the community, because it's really not easy. But I think the more you do it, the easier it gets, and the less you care about what other people might think about you. Like, I know that I've lost friends and the opportunity to become better friends with somebody because they are prejudiced or didn't feel comfortable with this part of my life, and I would much rather not be friends with them than compromise myself and my values and who I am. If you are earlier in your journey of coming out, I want to tell you that everything will work out no matter what. No matter if your friends don't accept you, no matter if your family doesn't accept you, as long as you have your own back, as long as you really from deep down accept and own who you are, you will find the people in your life who are not only okay with that part of you, but who celebrate that. And if that's not your family, well, you're going to find other people who become that to you. You have so many more people left to meet, so many more people left to love. You don't know everyone who you're going to love yet today. So keep yourself open and keep moving forward. That's the little advice that nobody asked for, but that's kind of my story at this point. Like I said, there's a lot more, and there's a lot more in the story of me and Lily, which basically, so we were together back then, right, when I was 21. We broke up for 4 years, and then we got back together almost 5 years ago now. And it's been the most rewarding relationship of my whole life, and I love her so much. She really is the love of my life, and I couldn't adore her more and everything that we've been through. But we wouldn't have gone through everything if I didn't also have all these other experiences as well. But that little love story will have to wait for another time. I have to go and hike back up to my car and enjoy my last few days in Sydney before I'm back on the road. I really hope this video helps somebody out there in some way. If you have questions, comments, anything, leave it in the comment box. Send this to somebody who might need to hear some of these things. I don't know. I could also make a follow-up video if there's a lot of questions about other things. And yeah, so that's it. How do you end these? Thank you for sitting with me. If you're still here listening, that's incredible. And yeah, I wish you all the best. Okay. Bye, guys. See you next time.